Hello and welcome to our 14th session, and in this session we are now going to start with Unreal Engine. So I will come into my Epic Game Launcher, double click to launch it. Now here in Unreal Engine I will come into library and I am going to start my camera settings project in version 5.6. Double click to launch it. So now I will come here, I will clear this message log. I am going to close this. It is asking whether you want to open one asset editor. I will click no here, and as of now it is open with module underscore 2. I will come into my content drawer, and in content int underscore vc in maps in main, I am now going to open this module underscore file level. So I will just double click to open this module, and once this module is open, I will roll the mouse back, I will right click, I tilt around and I will show you the scene. See, in this scene we have placed two cameras. See, one camera here and one camera here, and characters are at different position as of now. So to make this character sit here, I have to enable my sequencer. So if I come into the clapboard and if I select module underscore 5 sequencer, you can now see the characters are sitting in that position. And as of now I have three cameras here. One is this CU underscore tray camera. So if I select this, you can see the preview here, CU underscore Zeva camera, and I have one wide angle camera. So this wide angle camera will select this camera, come here and press F. This camera has gone outside the screen area and this wall is actually blocking the view. So what I have to now do is I will just zoom in like this, right click, turn around, and I have the wall here. This is the wall which is blocking it. So I will select this wall, and if I come into, you have this 6 underscore PD, this group. I will just hide this group. So when I hide this group, now if I come into camera and select the wide camera, you have this wide view. So I can even come here and choose wide camera. This is the wide view. I will press G on my keyboard and enter into game view so that all these icons are hidden. CU underscore Zeva, this is close up of this character. CU underscore tray, if I choose it, this is the close up of these characters. I will start with the CU underscore tray, and if I come into the details in the search, type exposure. If I just type EXP, you can see the exposure, and it has already been set to manual. We are using manual exposure, and there is an exposure compensation which has been set to 6. Okay, so now I am going to clear this selection, then I am going to scroll down here, and now in this camera setting, see right now this camera sensor size is 38 mm by 15 mm, and if you scroll down now, this is a zoom lens with 4 to 1000 mm, f-stop 1.2 to 22. Then if I come down to the lens section, the focus is done manually, and now you can see the current focal length of the lens is 24 mm and the current aperture is set to 1.8. Okay. So now if I change this aperture, so now you are seeing the exposure. Say if I want to reduce the exposure here, instead of 1.8, if I make this 4, you can immediately see the entire picture become dark. I have two scenarios wherein in one scenario I want all the object at the back to be focused. So to focus it, I may have to change my aperture. I will keep it at 11. So I will make 6 stop change. You can see this light is appearing clearly. It is clearly focused. Now we are getting the maximum depth. However, my entire image is turning dark. So how can I compensate this aperture? The other way I can compensate is by shutter speed, and here shutter speed is nothing but frames per second. For every camera there will be one post process added to every camera, and in this post process you can see here this tab. In post process, if I move down, I have already set the exposure to manual, and if I move to the camera section here, see, I have the camera section, and in this you have the shutter speed which is currently set to 60. See, I will enable the shutter speed and I will enable the ISO. So, I am going to make the shutter speed 30. So, when I change it to 30, you can see it has become slightly brighter, but still this is very dark. So, what I can do is, now ISO, instead of 100 ASA, if I change it to 800 ASA, now I am getting the same illumination with depth. Now the background is clearly focused. In this setting, we have everything focused and we have the maximum depth of field. I will eject out of this body and I will press F to come to the camera, and the camera, if it is not visible, press G. The camera becomes visible, and now you can see here is our camera. So, I will just turn and I will press F again. So, you are seeing the camera here. I am going to select this camera here and press Ctrl D to duplicate it. I will press F2 and I am going to call this CU tray with depth of field with DOF. And in this case, I want the depth of field to be minimal. So, I will come back here in the perspective, and this was the setting we did the last time. And if I come into CUF tray with DOF, what I will do is, right now I will move up, and in the camera settings here, I will come into the f-stop, aperture, it is set to 11. I am going to make this aperture 2. It is getting overexposed, and now I have to compensate this. How am I going to compensate it? I will scroll down now to my post process setting, and here in the camera the shutter speed is set to 30. I will set this back to 60, okay, and I will set the ISA to 100. Now you can see you have two cameras, and in this camera the background is totally blurred, but if I select the second camera, the background is clearly focused. Only thing is, in this with DOF is slightly getting overexposed. So, to control it, I will make this ISO of this 60, this camera intensity and CU underscore tray camera intensity, both are the same. Say by chance, sometimes what happens is, when we are using, by chance if I click on any of the objects here, in the outliner that object gets selected, and you see that this entire structure gets messed up. The easiest way is press shift and click on this triangle here. Everything collapses. If I again click back, see everything is collapsed inside, and if I open this, I can come to camera and select the camera, and I will come into CU Zeva. I will come here and I will choose CU underscore Zeva. We are seeing least depth of field here. So, everything in the background is blurred. I will move down into this post process. I will enable shutter speed and ISO, and here instead of 100, I will change the sensitivity of the camera to 75 and make it slightly down. I am going to give you this as a challenge for you. Now pause this video, and now I want you to create a second camera, and in that second camera I want all the background to be focused. Okay, how are you going to do it? So pause this video and just give it a try. Okay, I hope you have done it, but if I have not done it, I will repeat the process here. So what we are going to do is, to duplicate this camera, I will select this, press Ctrl D, duplicate it, then press F2, and I am going to call this as CU underscore Zeva, and this is with DOF. I will come here and choose this CU Zeva with DOF, and then scrolling down here in this camera, the very first setting is the aperture of this camera is set to, now if you see here, it is set to 1.8. I am going to set this to 16. You can immediately see the entire picture has become dark because I have increased the aperture and the light has decreased. So, now to compensate it, I will move down to the post process, and in the post process section I am going to reduce the shutter speed to 30 and I am going to the ISO value from 800. So, when I make it 800, it is brighter, or what I will do it, I will even make the ISO 1600. Okay, so now this image is appearing fine. In Unreal Engine, if you move to the top here where you have enabled your manual metering mode, below the manual metering mode you have one feature here called as exposure compensation. Now what happens is, whatever lighting we have used, it might not be precisely having the same wattage that is actually required for this image. Now instead of going and changing all the lighting, I can make an image brighter or darker by using this exposure compensation. Say for example, if I set this to 1, you can see it has become totally dark. Okay. Now what I have to do is, I have to go and increase the intensity of every light that I am using there. Otherwise, I will come here and if I set this to 8 for example, see it became more brighter. If I set it to 7, see it became slightly darker, and if I set it to 6, this was the default one. See, whenever we are in the camera view, you are seeing this intensity. Now I will press the eject button, and if I come into the regular view here, so I will deselect the camera, click somewhere here and deselect the camera. This view and our camera view say if you want it to be the same, then we are going to add a filter called as post process filter to our map. Say this post process is already added. So I will come here with shift pressed, click on this arrow and again open it. If I open this, and inside this 5 volumes, you have this post process volume. Now if I select this post process volume and if I delete it, then immediately you can see the entire scene is brightly lit because we are now not using any post process function. So now if I want to add this camera controls like aperture, shutter speed and this exposure compensation, everything to my entire scene, that is outside the camera, whatever I am seeing here, I have to add a post process volume. So for that, I will come into the plus icon here, and in this, if you come into visual effects, you have post process volume. So I will select this post process volume and I am going to drag and place it. So once I place it, I will open the transform and set this transform to 0, 0, 0. I will drag this post process volume and put it into this 5 underscore volumes folder now. And now if I just scroll down here, if I come into and type exposure, so I have one exposure feature here like last time. Right now the metering mode is off. If I enable this metering mode, I can change this to manual, and once I have changed it to manual, then I have exposure compensation here, and if I change it to 6, see now as of now there is no effect of this on the object. You are seeing that I am making it 6, but there is absolutely no effect because I will close this exposure volume. Post process volume, you are not seeing it here because I have pressed the G button. So if I press G again, you can now see a box here. See here I have the exposure, I have set it to manual. If I make it 1, this should become dark. It is not becoming dark because my post process volume size is very small. So I will move up and I will see its size. It is just around scaled 1 time. I will lock this and increase the scale to 10 times. Now you can see that this entire volume you can see it is covering my entire building. So here what I can do is I will unlock this and I can just adjust the size of this. What I will do is I will come into the top view, and in the top view you can see this. I will cover this volume exactly to my building here. So along the x-axis I will just scale it down so that it covers my building like this, okay, and along the y-axis I will turn it like this in the top view and I will cover the entire building like this, and then I will press here and move it like this and adjust this. Then I will come into the right view and you can see along the Z it is very large. So I will reduce this, move down and adjust it correctly so that this entire volume fits my entire building like this. And now if I move into my perspective view and I will select my camera here, see you try and press F, I will move in. First I have to select my post process volume here, then I will scroll down here, and now if I change my exposure volume here from 1 to 6, you can see this has become brighter, okay. And if you scroll down, you also have camera controls here. See, if I just move down after exposure and you have one camera control, I can enable shutter speed which is kept to 60, ISO is 100, and you have even f-stop. I can change this f-stop here to 1.2 so that my entire scene is now slightly brighter, okay. Or I can leave this at 4 only and I will increase the ISO to 800 AS. I can either change the ISO or I will move up, and here in the exposure compensation instead of 4 I will set it to 6. Okay, so now we are seeing this almost lit at the same intensity as our camera. See, this also has a feature called as motion blur. So I had already explained you this. See, now whenever I move the camera like this, see when I am moving it, see everything appears sharp. Actually in our head when we turn like this, we doesn't have this jerky motion, but we see a kind of motion blur in our eye because our eye shutter speed is 32. So right now we are seeing at 60 frames per second. So when I am turning it like this, I am not seeing that blurriness. So if I want that blurriness, then I can come here in search and type motion, and you have this motion blur. I will enable this motion blur and I will enable minimum all this value on target FPS. I have set it for 30 FPS, and now if I move this, you can now see that there is a kind of blurriness happening when I am moving this. See, you can see the blurriness happening here. So now I will set this per object size to 1, and now you can see when I move it, the object gets blurred. So this is how actually it appears to our eye. We call it as motion blur. So whenever you want, whenever you are turning or moving, if you want the images to be just like we see in our eye, we enable this motion blur. So right now I will off this. Okay. So now with this I will just zoom out here, and so now we have done all the exposure setting in our scene using in our cameras and also using this post process volume. So finally I will come into file and I am going to choose save all. With this we are going to conclude this session, and with this our day 3 hour 3 is over. So we have completed the first 3 days, and tomorrow, although we were supposed to start with storyboard and scripting, actually another next hour we are going to dedicate it to camera, because we have to understand some other types of camera and also about the sequencer. So the sequencer and camera rigs and camera dolly, we are going to discuss it in our next session. Thank you.